Hello, hello, hello. Come on in, come on in. This is your show host, Maxine Phillips with the Life Strategy Show. I want to share with you that life strategies, we talk about level less, and level less is success without levels. On this show, we are able to help unemployed, underemployed, those who pre and post retirees, and even those who are looking to be promoted. That's from the professional in transition. And let's not forget about our students who are high school and college level. We love being able to help you understand the direction that you're to take in life with a career path and hone in on that profession so that you choose the career that's best suited for you. You get the salary that you desire and you live the lifestyle that you deserve. So that's what Level is all about. Well, today, oh my gracious, today, I have a phenomenal guest speaker with me. And listen, get your pen and paper ready because we drop platinum nuggets. So be ready to take this information down and don't keep it to yourself. Share it with other individuals. We believe in paying it forward. So let's talk about our guest that we're having today. The guest is going to be Jimmy Davies. Jimmy, he's not only is he a proud father and a grandfather, but ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know before I bring him up that he is the founder of Every Dot Black LLC. That's Every with the dot Black LLC. And he's going to share some information with us that he has put in place for himself during these years that has helped him to be successful in what he's doing. He has weekly masterminds meetings, computer classes, podcast, TV show hosts. I mean, a plethora of things. And get this, he's commissioned to produce Dr. Joe Dudley Senior Legacy Project. Oh my goodness, I can't wait to hear more about that. And it's truly amazing. And I want you to pay attention so you can come on board and be a part of that information as well. So now let's bring up our guest for today, Jimmy Davies. Come on in, Jimmy. Come on in.
Well, hello. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing well. Doing well.
Well, listen, today we're going to be talking about entrepreneurship. We're going to be talking about the strategies that you put in place. And I know there are several areas that we're going to be talking about when it comes to technology, when it comes to global networking, when it comes to some of the projects that you're involved in and how we can continue to move ourselves forward in this new age of technology when it comes to chat with GPT, right? That's the up and going thing. And so we all need to be versed on that. But before we get started with those particular areas, tell me just a little bit about, or help our viewing audience to understand how you even got started in this business or in this line of work or in this passion that you have.
Wow. Well, I have to go back a few years to explain how it all happened. Coming out of college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do was in college. I thought I wanted to be a land surveyor, a land surveyor, civil engineering. And going into my junior year, I realized I didn't really like that. Didn't really want to. I had one class I didn't do well in. I realized my heart's not into this. So I went to my counselor and look, I just need to graduate. What's the quickest way to graduate? And he said, well, you've got a lot of math. And I said, with a few more classes, I could get a degree in mathematics. And so that's what I did. It's a lot of math and land surveying and civil engineering.
Okay.
But after that, I got a job with Social Security Administration, federal government, that I really wasn't looking for. They were looking to hire more minorities, and there was a job offer, and I had a young family. I got married really young, and so I needed to work. But I realized then, after being there 6 years, I hated working for someone else. I absolutely hated it, and I realized, this is not for me. And so I started trying other entrepreneurial ventures. I sold hot dogs at the county fairs. I did that one summer and so did okay, but realized that wasn't it. I had janitorial service. I had a real estate license, tried real estate. I actually had a couple of janitorial services. And my second janitorial service, I tried a professional waiters academy. Had this idea that when you go into restaurants, the wait staff doesn't give good service. So wouldn't it be a great idea to have a place where they can go and send their people to get trained? Everyone thought it was a great idea, but no one was willing to pay for it. Now that's a platinum nugget that you
That's
gotta have.
platinum nugget right there. You're so true.
Right.
That is
Yeah,
so
it's got to
true.
be something that the market's willing to pay for. If it's not, then it might not be a good entrepreneurial venture. So anyway, so I had a second janitorial service, and a friend showed me a Macintosh computer, and the light bulb went off. Actually, I had to back up. Even before then, there was a company, at the time I lived in Newport News, Virginia, and there was a company in Virginia Beach that was providing computer training, but not on Macintosh. They were doing, back then it was DOS, like
Uh-huh.
WordPerfect
Right.
and Lotus and
Right.
DBase, that stuff. And so I made a deal with them. That was something else too. I learned that you don't have to have money to get into business. If you can be creative. They say if you don't have a bucket of money, you have to have a bucket of ideas. And yeah. And so I made a deal with them. I said, look, you give me some training. I can take these classes for computer classes, and I will promote your business on the peninsula in Hampton, Newport News. They were in Virginia Beach, and they agreed because they were a young company and they were trying to get more business. So I would tell the companies that I'm already in as a janitorial service, hey, this company provides computer training. But what it did, it allowed me to see how they did it. And I could see how many people were coming to these classes, and it opened my eyes and like, this is a big demand for this. This was like in late 80s. And so a friend introduced me, showed me a Macintosh computer in the fall of 1987. And I knew no one else was doing Macintosh. The Macintosh was brand new. It only came out in 1984. So in January of 88, I started McMaster's Computer Training Service. And I tell people I had two problems. One, I didn't have a computer yet, couldn't afford it. And the other is I really didn't know how to use one yet. But I just knew I got to get into this. And so I would buy the books. I could afford the books. I bought the books to learn how to use the software. And from that, when someone would hire me, I would learn on their computer because I've already read the books as to what it should do.
Right.
And I would drum up business. And I had a couple other people, Dan Perret and Susie Parker. Dan was a scientist at NASA, but he loved Macintosh computers. And Susie was an instructor. And so the three of us, I would drum up the business and they would help me with the training because they were more experienced with training and the computers. Within 6 months, though, I was doing it myself as well. And I tell people one of the first jobs we got was a one-day job at NASA. We trained one secretary for one day, literally. And I went to the Army and said, we just did a training job for NASA. And they gave me
Love it. Love. Let me stop you right here.
okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to pay attention to these nuggets that's being dropped. The first one, no money. Use the other person's computer to train them on it, and then have used what he's leveraging the person he trained with the next company to let them know who he just had as a client. So that's a platinum nugget right there in your entrepreneurship. How do you continue to scale your business?
Yeah.
Okay, continue. That was awesome.
Well, that was like 80, 88, 89. And if you remember back then, there was a lot of software coming out.
A lot.
And no one knew how to use anything, PowerPoint or Photoshop, Illustrator. No one knew how to use any of that. And so that Army job really kind of got me going because they would call me every 3 months or so because they had new people coming in all the time.
Right.
And I kept going back. And then I started offering computer classes for people in the area. I was able to get a small office. with one of my mentors. I cleaned his office as janitorial service, and he had a spare office, and we made a deal. So I cleaned his office. I cleaned the entire building. He gave me a free office by cleaning the building.
Bartering,
Uh,
bartering.
and that allowed me to move from janitorial to computers. So I was still doing janitorial service for a while. But the other thing I took a job at Computerland, which I don't even think they're in business anymore, to sell computers because I just wanted to be around them to get to know more about them.
Right.
So I sold computers for about a year just to learn about them. They sold Macs and PCs. Um, and it took about a year and a half before I started getting enough computer training business where I didn't need the janitorial service. I didn't need to be working at Computerland. And then it began to just mushroom, literally. I did I just saw the demand, the need, and so I held a computer workshop in Virginia Beach for a week just to see, what people sign up, and they did. They signed up, and so then I said, well, let me try other cities throughout the state of Virginia. So I went to Richmond, I went to Danville, Fredericksburg. I don't know. I started going around the state providing computer training, and every place I went, people were looking for. And I only specialized in Macintosh training too. And here's another platinum nugget for you. A lot of people told me, why Macintosh? Because they have the smaller portion of the market, right? Maybe 10% of the market, where most companies are PCs. But I was the only Macintosh training service.
Bingo.
And so I get and not only that, is I was not a threat to the PC training services. So they started referring me business. The PC companies, the Compaq or the Dell at the time, whatever, when their customers say, what about Mac? They say, go see Jimmy Davies. So it just kind of grew from there, is that even though I didn't have I wasn't serving the larger segment of the market, my niche was Macintosh training. In fact, the company name was Mac Masters. That's where I got that from, Mac Masters.
Okay, nice.
And so we had just about all of the Mac training in the Newport News, Virginia area, Newport News, Hampton area, Tidewater, Newport News, Hampton Roads, all that area. And if there's a lot of military in that area.
Right.
So over the years, I trained literally every branch of the military. You name it, from Coast Guard, Army Corps of Engineers, Air Force, Marines, but it started with the Army.
Right.
And then I did go back to NASA on a 2-year stint teaching people in NASA how to use software. So yeah, just go one a little further. Because I don't know you got to stop me. But so then about 3 to 4 years in, I realized this is like big, so I went to the library at the time to see, well, where, because then to look in the phone books.
Right.
Internet wasn't big then. So look in the phone books, and there was no training services well, there were in Atlanta or DC, Philadelphia, that type, but there was no one in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. There was no one in Greenville. There was no one in Charleston, South Carolina, or Savannah, Georgia. So I wanted to see if I could expand in those cities. And again, not having the money to advertise on a national level, I had a car, so I sold my car to raise the money to buy the mailing labels. Well, like magazine companies will sell your name. So I went to Macworld and Mac Today. Those are Macintosh magazines. And I told them I wanted to buy all their subscribers for the state of North Carolina, state of South Carolina, state of Alabama, state of Tennessee. And they will sell them to you, because I figure if they're getting Macintosh magazines, then they need Macintosh training.
Right, that's right.
So I was, again, targeting my market. And then between that, the mailing lists, the labels. I had to print the materials, and the mailing was about a little over $4,000. And so that's why I sold my car to raise the money to do this mailing. The other thing I wanted to make sure I did is I didn't want to just try one city. I would try 5 cities at a time to spread the risk, right? Because one city might bomb, and sometimes one city did bomb, but the other 2 or 3 would always carry the ones that didn't work out.
Yeah.
And before I knew it, I'm servicing 30 cities in 8 states.
I love the word that you use, risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you knew your risk, and
Yeah.
you had a plan A and you had a plan B,
Yeah.
because you had the backup. When you put it out in 5 cities, if one city bombed, you had the other 4 that could carry you.
And that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
And as entrepreneurs, we have to think that way. We have a plan A and we have a plan B. So we still have to think that way. And parents, you need to think that way when it comes to your students. When you're preparing them for becoming adults, you need to think that way too. Yes, you do have a plan A, and some want to be sports oriented and go into the different professionals, but not everyone is going to get there. So what's the plan B? And that's where Levelers comes in at. Right. We are your plan B, we help you with your plan A and move you into your plan B. All right. So with this, the cities that you targeted, and so what was that was one strategy that you used as a backup plan, which was phenomenal. So what was another strategy that you used along the way in order to continue to scale your business?
Well, a couple of things. Once I started going to cities, you start realizing where the need was. For example, Charleston, South Carolina. They have an Air Force base there in North Charleston. And before I know it, I'm going to Charleston, South Carolina on a regular basis.
Okay.
Charleston, West Virginia was just the opposite. If you've ever been to Charleston, West Virginia, well, I shouldn't talk about the.
Don't talk about that, because that's the county seat of West Virginia.
Yeah.
I'm a West Virginian.
Right. Well, anyway, let's just say that the demand wasn't as high as it was in Charleston.
Exactly. There you go. Nicely put.
Yeah, but some places I ended up Macon, Georgia, turned out to be a great place. I wouldn't have thought Macon, Georgia. There was a small town, because what would happen was that sometimes I'd go to these places, and then before I know it, I'm going to the corporate office to train people. I was in Macon, Georgia to do a training job, and there was some of the people from Fitzgerald, Georgia, small town, but they created Delco auto parts. And so they brought me into Fitzgerald, Georgia for a whole week just to train people on software, using software. Same thing happened in Waynesboro, Virginia. There's a big DuPont plant there in Waynesboro. And we were there for I say we, but at the time I had to hire other people to help me with the training. We were there for I think we were there about 6 weeks. Wow. Just training people on how to use software. And then again, I went back to NASA on a larger deal, and I was there for NASA for about 2 years, teaching people how to use software. And this was NASA at Langley in Hampton, Virginia. Okay. NASA's got other facilities around the country, but we were in Langley, Virginia. Not Langley, but NASA Langley in Hampton, Virginia. Not to be confused with Langley, Virginia.
Well, I'm hearing you share all this great information with us and these platinum nuggets. It's that pay attention, be intentional, don't self-eliminate. So when you think a town is not going to be productive, all it takes is that one someone to see what you offer, and they can take you to different other places, and that still exists today. So don't ever exclude anyone, and especially don't ever exclude yourself from the possibilities.
Yeah, you're right. And you're right, because life is funny. You never know where it's coming next. I say, but you have to take that initial step. If you don't take that step, you won't know. If I hadn't tried Macon, Georgia, I wouldn't have known about Fitzgerald, Georgia. So, so you have to take those steps. But then the other thing I realized is that, well, 2 things. One, I started seeing things some bothered me and some didn't. But one thing I realized is that one, I'm not seeing people of color in the classes.
Okay.
You know, and that when I look back on it, that really was the impetus for Every Dot Black. You know, the other thing is that because the technology was so new, there was no organization for Macintosh trainers.
Okay.
So I started one
Look at
called the National Association of Macintosh Trainers, NAMT. And I just put the word out. Hey, would anyone out there like to start an organization for Macintosh trainers? Because one didn't exist. One of the things too that people thought, Apple always said that their computers were easy to use. You don't need training. Well, they are easier to use, and I'm sold on Macs, but you still need training.
Yeah.
And when I put advertised in one of the national magazines, Mac Week today, I think Mac Week was one of these publications. I don't even know if they're still around anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Hundreds of people responded. Hundreds. I mean, like I was hearing from people from all over the world saying, yeah, let's start a Macintosh Association for Mac trainers. And so I started one. And and back then, again, this was really before the internet was big. So we started, and we actually had a one annual conference in Florida. We went to in Orlando, where Disney, we thought that'd be a great place, and we all met up. But it didn't last. I think a couple of reasons. The Mac training scene was changing. The demand was beginning to change. What I mean by that, during the 90s, was a strong demand, but I could see that it was beginning to taper off. You said Plan B.
Right.
And because then the community colleges were beginning to offer classes,
Okay.
And in fact, when the community colleges in the Hampton, Virginia area started offering classes, they came to me to teach the classes and a few other of my computer friends because their professors didn't know how to use the software themselves.
Wow.
So they made us adjunct instructors. So I taught at Thomas Nelson Community College and Chesapeake Community College in Virginia, evening classes on how to use Macintosh software. But the other thing is that I realized too, I couldn't keep up with all the software. It was all coming out so fast every year. New versions of everything. And so I started, and by this time too, I had, I don't know, classrooms full of Macs by this time, in office and space in Newport News, Virginia as well. But the new versions demanded new software, demanded new hardware. And so I realized FileMaker is a database program for database development. People don't realize that we use databases every day, but they don't really understand. Most people don't really understand what a database is. When you go get your car worked on, someone pulls up your whole history of your car. That's a database system.
Database, yep.
Or if you go to the dentist, they have all your medical records. That's a database system. You take an airline flight, that's a database system. Someone had to create those systems to manage all that data. Now, I'm not talking about the people that enter in the data. I'm talking about the people that created the system that the data goes into.
Right.
Right. And so I was teaching FileMaker on how to create your database system.
Wow.
And so companies would come to me and then they would say, there's a lot to this. Can you just create the database for us? And so I did one for Hampton University. They wanted a database system to manage the abilities of all their professors so that when a grant comes up, they can just go into the database system and see, can we apply for this grant based on the professors we have on campus? So kind of match that up. So a grant would come up saying they need expertise in psychology or whatever it was.
Right.
And so they would just type in the needs, and then it would automatically generate a list of the people that we have on campus to fill the need. Then I did another database system for a company called Right Minds before that it was a company out of Williamsburg, Virginia. They created ornaments. I hope I'm not boring you. I get excited about things.
What I'm sitting up here hearing, because you started out talking about how you fell in love with the Mac, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And because it was like a light bulb went on. It was like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah, really.
And so that lends itself to me from the aspect of levelers when we're talking about helping individuals to understand their everyday natural abilities and strengths, that no one had to teach it to you. So
Right.
see, no one had to teach this to you. It
Yeah.
was already a part of who you are from your core. You discovered it
Yeah,
at an
exactly.
earlier age. But think about how many other kids or other people or other adults who have not yet discovered this about themselves, and they're still unsure if they're in the right profession or going in the right direction for a career path. I love what you're saying as far as you took what you already have a gift for, what you're naturally gifted at, and now you have evolved.
Yeah.
Has been
And
a continual evolution and a continual transformation.
yeah.
And now you're
Absolutely.
helping others.
Yeah. And I think that's really important too when you say to evolve, because yeah, you're right. The industry demands that you
Mm-hmm.
evolve, or you're not going to be around. So I
Right,
realized I need to specialize in database development because I can't keep up with all the software, uh, and the need is there. And I
right.
discovered my talents that I was good at it.
Yes,
I could teach people how to use Photoshop, but a photographer was creating things I couldn't create because I didn't have that photographic eye.
right.
But the database system, I realized, man, I have a knack for this. And people would see the databases I created and ask for me.
Yeah,
I didn't seek the jobs. They saw the systems I created and they said, I want that too.
yeah.
So for about 15 years, I specialized in computer training. But then I kind of went into database development because I didn't have to do as much travel. Um, and I could specialize in something to become really good at. The other thing I realized I learned that I was good at is that you mentioned my calm demeanor.
Uh-huh.
I don't get excited when people mess up. And so they, it relaxes them when they're in training. I'm patient with them.
Right.
I explain it in detail and I'm patient. And I discovered I have a good learning or teaching skills that I didn't go to school for. But again, the combination of adapting or really taking to the technology piece. Maybe it's an analytical part of me, but then also the patience of explaining it in great detail, step by step, and having patience with people because everyone doesn't get it at the same rate. It's just they don't. And it's not a matter of intelligence, but it's just what we're gifted at and what we're, things what we're not. So
And exactly. So that's why I'm so glad that you brought that out, because you said it's something that you have, that you do, that no one had to teach it to you.
right.
And that's what your everyday natural abilities are about. And again, I always say, imagine if we had more individuals in this world who could identify that earlier in life or discover that about themselves earlier in life, or even confirm, because sometimes we have an inkling of what we enjoy, but we're not sure if that's truly our passion. But
Mm-hmm.
imagine that the sooner or the earlier age a person understands that, and they have mapped themselves or put a strategy in place that takes them down that path where they're fulfilled, they love what they're doing, they just happen to be paid for it.
Right, right. And actually, back then people were really throwing money at me because I mean, now there's two things that I think we people are needing in our community is one, technology skills, the other is financial literacy. In
Yeah,
all honesty, I didn't have the financial literacy skills back then. People were just throwing money at me, and now, well, where did all that money go? But anyway, but I came around and realized that hey,
that's
there's
right,
two
right.
parts
You
to this
learn
thing.
it, right?
There's two parts to this thing. But yeah, and two other things I want to mention though is that you remember when AOL was really popular?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Well, I approached AOL. I learned. I went to a conference and I learned how they work, how AOL operates, because they had all types of things on AOL that you could be a part of. And this one guy, he was a photographer and he had a section on AOL. AOL doesn't have people with expertise in photography or cooking or whatever it is. They contract with people that do. Makes sense. So that's how they would have that all this great content about things that people were interested in.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to AOL and I said, I would like to start an area on AOL for African Americans. And they said, no. So I went to Apple and I said, I'd like to start an area on, because Apple was starting a program called eWorld, which was a competitor of AOL. eWorld was never as big as AOL. And I said, I'd like to start an area for African Americans. And they said, yes.
All
So
it takes is that one yes.
yeah. And so I actually, they flew me out to Cupertino to Apple headquarters for 2 days of training. And I was a big Mac enthusiast anyway, but they flew me out and I created it was called the African American Information Network on eWorld. We operated for about 2 years until Apple and AOL, they shut those online services down. Internet was getting bigger. But when I look back on it, eWorld, we had about 600 people a part of that eWorld that I managed. We had weekly discussions. At that time, it was chat. We weren't even like a Zoom, but it was a chat. We had weekly discussions on books or things going on in the community. I think Wednesday night was Women's Night. When I look back on it, that was really I guess the beta version of Every Dot Black.
Yes.
So Every Dot Black is not an overnight thing. It's something I've been thinking about and working on for 30 years. That's why I asked if you read that article that I sent you. It was something I wrote 30 years ago.
Well, I'm definitely going to go back and read it. That's for
It
sure.
describes the power. I realized the power of the internet.
Yes. Yeah.
And that
Of
we
course,
need to be
with
there.
GPT is also showing you even more of the power of the internet. And now that we're in the digital age, we thought you've got mail. Well, we couldn't wait to hear that you've got mail, you know. But now look at where we are. There's like now we can put something in, it types the whole paragraph for us and tell us how to word it, and then we just go in and modify it. Who would have thought it would have gotten to this level of using technology?
Right. You're right.
Wow. So that's good. So you have been a part of this evolution from the beginning.
Yeah, I have. I've seen a lot of it coming, but also there's a lot of it that I didn't see coming either. You know, because I mean, like I said, no one knows it all, but some of it I could realize, like, man, this is going to be big. And I realized that early on from the day, like say from day one, first someone introduced me to a Macintosh computer, I realized things are going to change. And I knew I needed to be a part of it. But wanted to share this as well is that the last database development company I was working with was a company called Hay Clinic. It's a spine surgeon in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I was here for 6 years developing his clinic's medical software so he can run his practice, right? Mm-hmm. And because we're automating everything, getting away from paper and putting everything on the computer. Dr. Hay said something to me one day. He says, Jimmy, says, what you're doing is your swan song. You know, he said, this is really important. He said, you're helping to save lives with the software you're creating that we use in our medical practice. And I thought about that and I thought, this is not my swan song, Dr. Hay. This is your swan song. This is what you've always dreamed of.
Bring his vision to reality.
And I realized I've been always helping other companies bring their vision into what they want to do. And so that's when I started thinking about, you know, I need to find out what do I want to do with all my technology skills. And I told Dr. Hay, I said, I need to leave. You know, I stayed on an extra year. He didn't want me to go. He's an extra year to train someone to take my place, a young guy to take my place. And then I left. And then I started trying to figure out, what do I want to do? That was in 2015. What do I want to do with the technology I've learned? I know our people we don't even know what we don't know.
Exactly.
I'm seeing all of this every day, and I'm realizing our community doesn't even know it exists, let alone how to use it.
Yeah.
And that fall, 2015, I was introduced to Joe Dudley.
Wow.
And that's when I started attending the mastermind meetings. And that's when I started to realize the power of entrepreneurship and that we need to think about, you know, as he says, we're out of slavery, we have our civil rights, but we're not the entrepreneurs. We're always working for someone else.
Right.
And that's when the light bulb, like technology, computer skills, entrepreneurship. I've been an entrepreneur. And that's in January of 2018 is when we officially launched Every Dot Black. But I
Wow.
attended those meetings for a couple of years at Mr. Dudley's house every week. I traveled from Durham to Kernersville every week, sometimes twice a week, got to know him well, to the point where he trusts me now to document his legacy.
And not only trust
So,
you, but you are commissioned
yeah, yeah,
and the producer.
yeah. And so we've created a lot of we're preserving his content. Basically, he's been saving his content and telling his story. So there's some talk about a movie or a real movie, a real documentary, and whoever does it, we've already done the research. We know the story better than anyone now. So I'm hoping that there's some talk. That's all I can say at this point. But there's some talk. I'm hoping that someone steps up to actually make a real movie, and we can tell the story. So I say we, myself, my team, Kim, my sister Kim,
Right.
Michelle Taylor, Nellie Lee. Those are the four of us. But there's also another dozen that have chipped in, but the four of us have really been the core of creating this content.
Well, just tell the viewing audience just a snippet of who Dr. Dudley, Joe Dudley, is and what he has done without giving them the whole shebang, so that they can have
Sure.
at least a little premise of what you're talking about.
Sure. Yeah. When I speak of Joe Dudley, I'm talking about the co-founder of Dudley Hair Care Products,
Right.
Dudley Products. They have over 400 products they've created now. The daughter now runs the company, but he and his wife, he started literally with $10 and created a company, bringing in over 35 million a year. At his peak, he had over 600 employees. Um, but along the way, he always had these meetings, these weekly meetings, mastermind meetings. It didn't matter what kind of business you had. He always promoted self-reliance and entrepreneurship, and that you can do it. If you believe in yourself, you're willing to work hard, whatever your goals are, you can achieve it.
Yeah.
And so going to these meetings, it opened my eyes. I've never worked for a computer. I mean, hair care company, or I never worked for the company at all.
Right.
But I saw all of this content that he had preserved, some of it going back 50 plus years.
Right.
And I thought, this is going to be lost. If, some of it's getting molded. And he had literally boxes and boxes of things that he's been saving. And I asked him if we can preserve it. And he agreed. So I drew up a contract, and we agreed to that, and to use it in a podcast. And that's what we've been doing. And we're using the proceeds from the podcast to convert more and more content. But we,
Well,
we had
I was going to say, while we're on this subject, how can individuals become a part of this project? Is there a way for people to contribute?
sure. Well, on our website, on the Every Dot Black website, we've got links for everything, whether it's mastermind meetings that we do or the Joe Dudley podcast. So www.everyebry.black. One of the links there are the podcast, what takes you to the Joe Dudley podcast. From there, you can actually become a subscriber. So you can actually see and hear some of these interviews that we've been doing of these people. We've interviewed over 250 people associated with the company or either work for him, or just being impacted by him.
Right.
And you can subscribe at $10 a month, 25 or 50 a month, whether you want to just hear the interviews, hear his speeches, or also we can, for 50 a month, we will also put your ads on the podcast. If you have a commercial, we'll help promote you as well. And the money goes towards, again, it goes towards converting more content from VHS, cassette. He even has things in beta. Remember the old beta?
Beta, yeah.
They even have reel to reel. He has cassette recordings of S.B. Fuller. S.B. Fuller died like I think in the 70s or so. So they have all this content that he's been saving. And we just realized that there's a lot of lessons in there to see how one person became a millionaire. He says, if you want to know how to bake a cake, you get the recipe, right?
Right.
So if you want to know how to be a millionaire, just get the recipe. How did someone else do it? And you study them and you learn from them. So yeah, so
And
that's
he
really good.
also had another favorite saying about paying it forward. What
Hmm.
was his philosophy on that? Because I think
Well,
that's a great life strategy.
yeah, several of his people that worked with him, they wanted to just give him money, give him cars, give him things, but he just always told them, says the greatest gift you can give me is to pay it forward, and that's actually what he did. His mentor was a man by the name of S.B. Fuller, who had a company in Chicago. Now, S.B. Fuller also only had 18 months of formal education, but he was self-taught. He also believes in reading. Mr. Dudley says readers are rulers. And so in these meetings, they would read, which is why we read in our meetings.
Right.
But now we actually take the light version because Mr. Dudley have you reading for an hour before you even start the meeting.
Yeah. And we engage in conversation. So yeah.
Right, right. But he got that from S.B. Fuller, and every now and then, Mr. Dudley will do a 6 hour read. He'll take a day and we'll just read, and I've done it with him. Like for one day, we'll just okay for this day. All we're gonna do is just read. Pick a
Wow.
book and just read.
And that's powerful in itself because many times if we're not careful as entrepreneurs, we will not have that me time. And
Mm-hmm.
that me time can also serve as a space for self-development, and so we have to make sure that we constantly feeding ourselves and not just pouring out to others, but we have to be replenished.
Yeah.
That's a way of replenishing ourselves, not only through reading, but also through engaging in the mastermind group that you're talking about.
Well, they say, yeah, you're not going to change, or you will change based on the people you meet, who you associate with, and the books you read.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're reading and engaging with people, like-minded people, and say the people you engage with, because you don't want to be with the wrong crowd.
Exactly. Make
Let's
it
say
positive.
if you want to, you know, fly with the eagles, you can't hang out with the turkeys. So
Right.
one of those things.
Yeah, because they might not even leave the ground and you ready to stay
Exactly.
flighting them and soar, we're ready to
Right.
soar. So
Right.
having given us all of this great information, Every Dot Black, give us a little bit about your vision and your mission for Every Dot Black.
Well, I just realized, that people of African descent. At first I used to say African Americans, but I realized it's people of African descent all over the world. If you think about it, um, there's an economic gap, income gap, and I believe that in order to close that gap, we have to embrace technology.
Mm-hmm.
It levels the playing field, and we have to think globally, global networking.
Right.
So I envision Every Dot Black. I feel like God, how can made I don't I feel like God created, put in me the exact what is exactly needed to take that next step forward on a global level. I'm not trying to boast, but it's just like I feel like that's my mission. I don't know of anyone else that has 30 plus years of experience with technology. And I say I'm old enough to remember the civil rights movement, but young enough to get engaged in this technology. Um, I lived in Africa for a while, so I've been there, and I just remember that. So I'm just thinking that with the use of technology, we can teach people around the world how to use it
Right.
and promote entrepreneurship. The same lessons that S.B. Fuller and Joe Dudley preached, but they didn't have the opportunity to do it on Zoom and reach people around the world. They met in a room for 40 years. We're meeting on a global stage, since the 28, well, actually, since COVID,
Right.
because at first we are meeting in a room, but then when COVID happened, we went virtual like everyone else. And now we're literally bringing in people from the Caribbean. We're bringing in people from Africa. We're
Right.
bringing in people from Europe, from South America, so we actually had an official group now, Every Dot Black Caribbean, that's been up and running for a year and a half, and we had Every Dot Black Africa, who we got to restart. Our leader in Africa, she had some health issues, and so she wasn't able to continue, but we're going to be restarting Every Dot Black Africa as well. So I envision Every Dot Black as teaching people around the world how to use technology to help them with their businesses, and then also networking, because what's happening is that by coming on Zoom on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, I see our members are bonding with each other and
Yes.
partnering with each other. Just last night, one of our members in the Caribbean in St. Lucia was telling us about a thunderstorm that came through and wiped out his crop. He's a farmer.
Yes. Yes.
Today, I noticed that some of our members have already made a contribution to him to help him get started, get going again. I know. I didn't even ask for it. He told the story, and at the end of the meeting, I didn't even know it happened, but because we're connected globally, someone here in the States has already reached out to him to help him restart his crops, to help him get going again, because of the hurricane or the bad weather. I don't know what it was, but bad weather wiped out their crops in St. Lucia.
Jimmy, there are many individuals who have groups, and we already know this, right? And many proclaim that they do it from a community perspective. But when you hear this type of interaction without having to ask, then you know it's a community. Yeah. It's a community of like-minded people. It's a community of that servant leadership. It's a community of being able to give back and helping others to continue to move forward. Because other than that, his whole crop being destroyed could have caused him to stop. Mm-hmm. Not to move forward, because that's what his livelihood, that's life, that's survival, right. That's his family eating and moving forward. But yet and still, you have a community here, and no amount is too small. Mm-hmm. That once you give, it stretches. I always turn a penny into a dime. Right. When others give. And so I admire that about Every Dot Black. And when I became a member, I see it often. I don't just see it every now and then, which makes a big difference. I don't see it where people want you to give, but they're not willing to give you. Mm-hmm. It's reciprocated. It's back and forth, and it's done without having to ask. People see the need and they step forward and do it.
Yeah, and that is very rewarding. Like when I see that happen, when I see the bonds being made, the connections being made, especially when it's across the water, there's been a number of instances where our members are partnering up on different things to do different things. Some of our members put together they did a great job putting together a health fair.
Yes.
Earlier this year. And now some of our members are putting
together. Tell us about this new initiative that's getting ready to happen this fall.
Sure. There's a couple of them. One, some of our members are putting together a financial opportunities and literacy summit. So our members are coming together to do that. And I purposely have tried to kind of let them do it. So our members are putting it together. And in the process, I'm sure they probably realize they're getting to know one another. They're building that relationship. Whatever happens with the summit, they're developing relationships.
Yes.
The other thing is that we're working on a technology summit for November, because that's my passion. So I said we can't do a health and a financial literacy we got to put technology in there too.
Right.
And so we're doing a technology summit where I want to really highlight things like Apple Vision that has just been announced, that people don't even know it exists.
Powerful. Oh my gracious.
Yeah.
Oh, that video is just out of this world.
Yeah. And it was science fiction a few years ago. Now it's reality.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. For people that may not know what I'm talking about, if you go on YouTube and look up the Apple Vision, Apple just made an announcement of their virtual, it's really not virtual reality, but augmented reality headset.
Right.
Facebook really kind of led the way a few years ago when they came out with the Oculus with virtual reality and the metaverse. And I think that's going to be big, but also Apple just upped the ante with Apple Vision.
Apple Vision. And not only that, Jimmy, what it does, it helps individuals, whether young, medium, or senior, to look at the world through a different lens. Mm-hmm. It's totally through a different lens. Yeah. I mean, I wear eyeglasses, so their prescriptions based on my need, right? But this augmentation that we're looking at with Apple Vision is like It's unreal. It's absolutely unreal. And it's so exciting to see all the things that you can do with it and all the futuristic things that's getting ready to happen because of it.
Right. Now, the other side of that, though, they predict that because of Chat GPT and artificial intelligence, that about 300 million jobs are about to be affected
I can
worldwide.
see that.
That's why we have to be aware of what's coming next to see where do you fit, where how can we adapt so that we're not one of that 300 million
That's
on
out,
that's
out of
out.
employment. That's out of
Right.
employment.
We
And
want we
that's
need to.
where levelers also comes in at because we do these ability assessments to help individuals to look at what are your everyday abilities that perhaps you're not even using.
Mhm.
Because sometimes we're so programmed that we've learned a skill and we think it's an ability, but that's a learned skill opposed to something that we're naturally gifted at that no one had to teach it to us.
Right.
And so that's
Absolutely.
where we try to help you to understand that and then repurpose those skills that you have into as technology move forward. How can you repurpose those skills and be a part of it and not be left behind? So, what would you tell your 14 and 19-year-old self now based on what you know now versus when you were at that age then?
Um, oh boy. Couple of things I think. One, like I said, early on, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no idea. I really wasn't even thinking about it too much until I got into the working world and realized I got to do something to make a living.
Right.
So I think just exposing yourself to as many things, being active in school or active in activities, kind of you want to get exposed to things, uh, just to give you ideas. You want to, when in school, I didn't really participate in much of anything until college. In college, I blossomed in college. Before then, I didn't know. The other thing I think also is going back to financial literacy. Uh, I think the only thing when I look back on it, the only thing I learned about financial literacy is like how to write a check. That was it. You
Okay.
know, I didn't understand the power of compounding interest or saving. So when I said that when I had the computer training, made a lot of money, but I didn't have the financial knowledge, literacy knowledge to know how to manage it. It
Mhm.
because people just literally throwing money at me.
Right.
Um, so I think those are the things is that you want to get exposed to as much as you can when you're early on. Just be active in things. There's all kinds of activities for youth. So you want to get exposed and start thinking about what you like, what you don't like to do. Think about what kind of career you want to at least try. Uh, and then when you if you can decide that, or even if you want to investigate that, find someone that does it. If you want to be a dentist, then ask a dentist, tell me what it's like to be a dentist. What do I need to do to become a dentist? Whatever it is that you wanted. I just said dentist out of random because I just went to the dentist. But the bottom line is, just ask someone to tell you about what they do. Try to, and then the other thing is that um, develop a habit of saving. You know, um, and again, you have to just self-educate yourself if necessary. If that's
Right.
the if
Right.
necessary, you got to reach out to people. There's lots of people out there, no matter what it is you want to do. There's a lot of people that are willing to help, but you got to reach out to folks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I always share about the ability assessment because ability assessment has not always been here. A lot of people do personality assessments or career assessment, but I use an ability assessment so that they understand the abilities that they were born with.
Yeah.
Then how do you map that into a career or into the profession that match what your true abilities are?
Right.
That way, you know if it's going to be dental, if it's going to be medical, if it's going to be scientific, if it's going to be engineering, if it's going to be accountant, or is it that you're going to be employed by someone? Is that a
Right.
better fit for you?
Right.
Or is becoming an entrepreneur like what you just talked about? You realized early on you did not want to work for someone.
Right. Yeah.
And so you had a totally different mindset. And then there are individuals who like, I could care less about doing all this on my own. Let me work for someone else and let them give me the paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And then I live accordingly. But even with that, Jimmy, they still need to understand, how do you help those organizations to understand the value that you're adding to their organization? So there is still an art, and many times you need a coach, a career
Oh,
coach,
definitely.
that's going to be able to help you do that.
Definitely. Yeah, you mentioned a coach, and when I look back on my life, I had several mentors. I still have a mentor right now, but I've had several mentors that were really instrumental in my life. And one I would talk about, his name was Nolan Burke. He's deceased now. But when I had that janitorial service and I needed a space to start the computer, he was
Right.
a retired naval officer, and he owned the building that I cleaned and had my first office in. A white guy, a retired naval officer, and his office was one end of the building, mine was on the other. And all week long, you see him in the hallway, he wouldn't say anything to you, like, you say hi. He just kind of rough. He just
Right.
didn't have talk to you. But on a Friday afternoon, every Friday around 3 o'clock, he'd go across the street to 7-Eleven and get some wine, and he starts drinking every Friday. And by 5 o'clock on a Friday, he was ready to talk.
Okay.
And so every Friday evening, we would talk sometimes for hours. And he would tell me about all the things he had seen that I did right that week, and the things that he saw that I was doing wrong that week. And he gave me a lot of great advice. But it wasn't until all week long, you don't think he's even noticing, but he
Right.
is. Another guy, his name was Henry Malcolm, and he's deceased now too. But Henry was a good friend. But he was someone that I could go to. He was older. He's also retired Navy. But he was someone I could go to for any personal things, life issues.
Right.
We just became friends. I helped him after he retired. He wanted to get into janitorial business. I helped him get into the janitorial business. But then he also was just someone I could just go to about anything.
Anything.
You know, and then the
Oh,
one I do have to mention, I mentioned Joe Doug, but also need to mention Lafayette Jones, who mentors me today.
oh, good.
Lafayette Jones was vice president of John H. Johnson for marketing of Jet and Ebony magazine.
Right.
He was vice president of George Johnson with Johnson Products for Afro Sheen and Ultra
Right.
Sheen.
Right.
He was Orville Redenbacher popcorn. So he's done a lot of national marketing campaigns for 40 plus years, he and his wife. So
Wow.
he has done a lot of mentoring with us on how to refine the mastermind meetings, how to go after more computer training for the members of Every Black. So a lot of the things that you see that we do, some of them are his suggestions. One of the things that I learned about him that I didn't realize, on your microwave, there's a popcorn button. You hit the button that says popcorn.
Right.
Because of Lafayette Jones. They were trying to sell more Orville Redenbacher popcorn. So they went to the manufacturers to say, we need a button on your microwave that says popcorn. And they did it. And now they all do it. But that was because of a suggestion from a Black man on national marketing. And he said when they first tried microwave popcorn, they couldn't get it right, Orville Redenbacher, and the bags were catching on fire.
Right.
And they actually burned down a few homes. He said the
Oh.
microwave would catch on fire, the curtain would catch on fire, for no, the house is on fire.
Mm.
And they were going to abandon microwave popcorn, but he told them, says, no, we've got to figure this out. This is the future. And of course,
I mean,
yeah, of course they did. So yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's what came to my mind was the timing of it. How many seconds did they put on it? How many minutes did they put on it? What are the
Well,
ingredients and how many ingredients? What is the bag content?
exactly. The bags, whatever the bags they were using. If you notice now, they say this side up,
Yes,
So, yeah, you want to make sure you got the right side up, otherwise the whole thing might catch fire. So yeah.
exactly, exactly. Oh my gracious. And that is a known Black history fact.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So, this has been an awesome conversation, Jimmy. I knew a lot about you, but I've learned even more today. And again, the fact that it was that aha moment in your life that you realized that you had solutions for situations or concerns or people needing to understand how to do better in their work or in the computer and understand how to move forward. And you were a part of the solution.
Yeah, thank you. And when I look back on it, like say, I don't know, some of it was planned, but some of it was, I think, ordained
You made to use the word ordained. We was getting
yeah,
ready to say it at the same time.
yeah, because
Yeah.
yeah, and even some of the things that I had the opportunity to do have, I can see how it's all led to the development of what we're doing today. The pieces from the past all contribute to what we're doing today, whether it's the African American Information Network on eWorld or creating the organization for Mac trainers, that just managing an organization, the computer technology training, all of that, has led to what we're doing today. And I think I know it's about to get much even larger.
Yeah.
We've got some projects in the works that we're not at liberty to say it, but
Right.
it's about to get really big.
And not only that, because we have what is called that servant heart, and we don't mind sharing and helping others move forward. There are enough people in this world for everyone to have a piece of the pie.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
don't have to worry about trying to keep it all to yourself, because once you're no longer here, it goes with you.
That's right. That's right.
I'm a firm believer. I tell everybody, I want to leave this world empty. I want to leave this
I feel the same way.
empty.
I feel the same way. And so like I feel like I'm not done yet.
Yes.
I'm just not done yet.
Yes. And my tagline is transforming generations and leaving legacies.
Yeah, perfect.
All
Yeah.
it takes is to touch that one person, and they take it back to their siblings, to their families, and the light switch goes on, and people start having a change in mindset and believing in themselves, and it helps them to then continue to start moving forward.
And when you say that believing in yourselves, and something that our parents, I have a sister, Kim, and it's just the two of us, but our parents always told us that we can achieve anything if we're willing to work hard at it. And, and once we make that decision, and I believe them, and the other thing they really stress is they say, get an education, because an education is something no one can ever take from you.
Never can take it away from you.
And so neither one of them had the opportunity to go to college. My father didn't even finish high school. Never got a chance to go to high school. But those lessons, it starts with those lessons our parents instilled in us, is that get an education and you can achieve anything if you're willing to work at it. So if you want it bad enough.
Oh man, listen, we can go on and on and on, but I think the producer might say, Maxine, you're over time.
Yeah, we probably are.
But you know what that means? You're going to have to come back. So
Okay,
I need to invite you back so we can have a part 2. Because you're doing great things. And like you said, you're not at liberty to reveal any of that just yet. But when you are, come back and share with our audience. We're in 200 countries. You are global and international. We're on Pod TV. We're on Roku. We're on Amazon. So you have an audience. And listen, ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy is also a TV and podcast producer himself. So what we're going to do is make sure that we put this information out there so you have a way of getting in contact with Jimmy. As you see, he has it on his screen, Jimmy at every.black, so you know how to reach him. And don't be strangers. Go on, reach out to him. Become a part of every.black. I guarantee you're going to enjoy it and you are going to learn. So as I close out today, Jimmy, thanks again for being here, for being my special guest, for dropping all these platinum nuggets. And I leave with my viewing audience saying, I believe in you. I trust you believe in yourself. We'll see you back here next week at the same place, same station, with another special guest. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.